By now, you probably saw the damage done by Hurricane Paloma in Cayman, Brac, and Little Cayman. The high winds toppled trees, down power lines, and battered buildings. But what happened underwater and along the bluff?
We went, we looked. On the sea it looked okay, on land, well, we've all seen it, it was a hurricane.
A hurricane that stripped the forest on the bluff bare. This is what the land looked like before being pounded by Paloma. This is what was left of the forest after the storm subsided.
You can almost see from one side of the bluff to the other. There's very few leaves on the trees, almost none in fact. There's some quite severe damage to some of the larger trees especially. Anything that was kind of sticking its head up out of the canopy has really been hit very badly. And a lot of especially the larger trees have been very badly damaged. You have trees just snapped in half by the force of the wind there. Now birds that once spent their days in the top of trees are scavenging for food on the ground. The good news is when we did the spot assessment, we noticed that there is quite a bit of wild fruit, the berries on the birch still. There's still berries on the silver thatch there, especially in the more sheltered areas. So there is a supply for birds in the short term, and we hope that within the next couple of weeks the branches will be coming into bud, and again that will provide fresh food for the birds. In the meantime, however, the wildlife rescue section of the National Trust for the Cayman Islands, they're actually mounting a kind of temporary feeding effort to help support some of the birds, and I understand they're collecting old fruit from the supermarkets on the island here towards just giving the birds something to tide them over in the meantime. I think it's probably a little bit early to tell exactly what the impact has been on some of the forest birds. What we do know for certain is that there has been an impact on some of the seabirds. We've had at least 20 of the brown boobies have been found dead on the end of the bluff there, and also quite a few of the frigate birds. We've had 7 washed up, and the problem is that the ones that you find that are dead are only probably a small proportion of the population that have actually been killed. So that's something we need to follow up on and find out what the true extent of the damage is to the seabird population. The results from the underwater analysis are a bit brighter.
The marine section went very quickly. We were able to complete that in one day. There was limited damage to the reefs and marine resources in Cayman Brac. The Little Cayman Marine Resources, one of our officers was able to check that previously with some of the divers over there already, able to report to us that they had come through fine, much like the land side was. We weren't too surprised by that. We were pleasantly surprised by how well the reef resources came through. There was minimal amounts of sand movement. A lot of the sponges and sea fans remained intact. There was obviously a fair number ripped off, but it was not the complete denudation, if you will, that we saw after Ivan. So given the strength of the hurricane, we were, pleasantly surprised by that. But it does match with the reports we got from people on land regarding the level of the storm surge. It just didn't seem to, the sea didn't kick up that much basically. Where the damage came was obviously from the horrendous wind damage on land. There was some debris in the water. I mean, that's going to happen, but it wasn't, compared to the damage that we saw to the buildings, most of that seemed to stay on land. It didn't come back out into the sea this time. We also didn't see as much in the shallow areas, turtle grass getting ripped out and buried in sand. Part of this is because of the Brac topography. They don't have the same big sounds as we do. But in the areas that we were able to look at, that we might have seen that it wasn't that bad.
Although it will take time for the reefs to return to normal, most swimmers won't notice anything out of the ordinary.
The reefs look good. I say there's not quite as much soft coral and sea fan sponges as it would have been before, but there's also not as much algae. So again, that gets scoured off during a hurricane. For a reef, that's good. It leaves more room for the corals to regrow, and the reef looks rockier, not as fuzzy, if you will, which to divers, that's fairly appealing. They don't have all this green moss everywhere. One of the interesting spots, we obviously stopped at the underwater sculpture Atlantis. They had taken some of those pieces out of the water before the hurricane. It turned out to be a very wise idea. That one site probably had the most toppling over of anything else. Some of the pieces that were left underwater were flipped over and knocked down. You can't out-engineer Mother Nature sometimes, unfortunately.
But fortunately, the state of marine life isn't a major concern, so the Department of Environment will focus on the forest.
One of the unique things about Cayman Brac is that of 3 Cayman Islands, Cayman Brac is the only place that you'll find the brown booby. That's only found on the bluff on the east end of Cayman Brac. Sometimes people get mixed up because you also get the booby birds on Little Cayman, but they're a red-footed booby. It's a completely different species. So that's something to be particularly interested in conserving on Cayman Brac and making sure that those birds had survived the storm.
All the information collected in Cayman Brac and Little Cayman will be compiled into a report, which is available here at the Department of Environment. Research officers plan to return to the Brac in the near future for their final assessments.